I was tired last night. TSN's website sucks. I use TSN for scheduling in terms of seeing what's going on the next day. For whatever reason, their days never match up. So yes, I predicted tomorrow night's scores instead of tonight's scores last night. I changed the title of the video though, so I'm okay now that I changed the title. But yeah, go ahead and go to Sportsnet's page, go to the scores. It'll show tonight's scores, and then click on any date at the top, and it goes to the wrong day. And I thought I had it last night. I thought I had it, and it just went to the wrong day. So tonight, again, so Buffalo has this mystique with Toronto over the last however many years. Buffalo beats Toronto every time. Earlier this season, I said the new Toronto Maple Leafs, the rookies, they just don't know better. Now they were down 2-0 after one, and now it is 3-2 for Toronto. And now they're changing goalies in Buffalo. And Anderson's been getting better as the game goes along. Now, it's one of those things that the Leafs, and especially Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and Martin, as guys who haven't been in Toronto before, they don't seem to understand they're not supposed to win. And I may be oversimplifying things. I may be oversimplifying it. But there's always been a mentality with the Leafs over the last 10 years. Okay, since the big lockout that wiped out an entire season. That was 04-05. Yeah, it's been since then. Since the salary cap came in and wiped out their ability to buy every veteran player that's available, there's been a Leafs mentality on the team, and you Leafs fans can argue with me whether it's there or not, but it's always felt like they're on the verge of collapse. It's always felt like that. Whether they're ahead or they're tied, it's like it's the Leafs. They're going to find a way to lose it, and they lose it. And this group of kids, and I know for some people, you know, they aren't happy that I talk about the Leafs as much as I do, but they're winning a lot. Right now, they're in the playoffs. And the fact that the Leafs not only are in a playoff position, but unlike 12-13, they're getting better as the season goes along. In 2013, the last time they made the playoffs, they were getting worse as the season went along. And if it had been an 82-game season, I fully believe they would have fallen out of the race. But a shortened season worked to their benefit. And they made the playoffs, and they took Boston to 7, and they lost. They had a huge lead, and they lost. And I'm not going to discuss that because, of course, that's all wounds. But you know, that series perfectly epitomized how it worked with the Leafs after that lockout. Play well, but lose. Play hard, try really hard, and lose. And Phil Kessel's really had a good run in Pittsburgh, but it helps for Phil Kessel that Crosby and Malkin get all the attention. Kessel is not a number one guy, and I think he's more comfortable being secondary, third kind of player. Auston Matthews is a primary frontline number one center. He is. Auston Matthews is everything he was built to be, and I honestly think that if people are honest with themselves, if you're a Leafs fan, I don't think you expect him to be this good this soon. I don't think anybody did. I didn't. I figured 50, 55 points, probably, maybe 20, 25 goals, and he'll get better next year. And 3 years in, he'll be a point-a-game guy, and he'll be one of the best players in the league. Don't look now. He's one of the best players in the league. Now, for people who don't like Toronto, and there's a lot of them, and I'm sure there's a lot of subscribers who don't like Toronto, you're going to say, oh, well, Matthews, and, I think sometimes our anti-Leaf bias blinds us to how good this kid is. Matthews is fantastic, and so's Marner. At the time that the Leafs drafted Marner, I thought they were insane. I thought that kid's a pipsqueak. He's not going to be an NHL top 6 forward for very long. He's going to get worn down, and he's small, and teams are going to key on him. And I really thought that. But maybe there's some PTSD in Vancouver due to Jordan Schrader. Maybe there's some of that. Where we, draft a kid who's small but supposed to have all the talent in the world, and it just never worked out for him in Vancouver. He's carved out a decent niche for himself in Minnesota, but it was never going to happen in Vancouver. But Marner has been fantastic. This Leafs team, as it stands right now, so yeah, they're up 3-2. It's just over halfway through the second period. It's a fun team to watch. And they're creeping up the standings. Somebody asked last night, said, do a video on the role the Leafs are on. I've done videos on the role the Leafs have been on. I was doing videos on the role the Leafs were on before they were on the roll. Started the season when they were losing these games. I was telling people they're the most fun team to watch. Yeah, they're losing, but they're fun. And that's really, when you've got NHL center ice and you can watch any game, you're going to watch the fun game. You're not necessarily going to watch the two titans, the two behemoths going at it. Sometimes the fun game to watch is the whatever. Tonight, for instance, I was watching Carolina and Columbus as well, because it was Carolina announcers in Columbus. So after the first period where Columbus gets the 2-1 lead, all they were talking about was Aho, which is good, because if you're a Carolina fan right now, Sebastian Aho is your future. And the goal he scored tonight, if you didn't see it, look it up. There's some fantastic footage out there, I'm sure, of him scoring. It was a really nice goal. But I thought it was funny. I'm like, okay, they're losing, but if you listen to the announcing and you don't look at the score, you'd think they were just killing it. And they talked to Rod Brindamore in between periods. They had a pre-taped interview, and then during the second period, they talked to Rod Brindamore on the bench. So, and Brindamore, God love him, the guy played forever in the NHL. And he's a guy that if at some point in time the NHL says, you know what, he belongs in the Hall of Fame, I couldn't argue against it. He is one of those few players that got better as he got older. And he's a natural leader, and I think someday he'll make a fantastic coach. Like, fantastic coach. But I digress. This Leafs team against Buffalo, a team that has owned them, is showing that they don't know better. I said it before this season too. They don't know they're supposed to lose. Austin Matthews, Marner, all of these new faces, all of these rookies, they don't have a clue they're supposed to lose. They don't read all the headlines. You could tell, even when Maple Leafs under Kessel and when JVR was one of the main guys, you could tell they were reading headlines. They were getting rattled. You could tell that there was some resentment from the fans towards the players and from the players towards the fans. And I could never understand it. That's why it's funny when they say, well, why is Kessel booed when he goes to Toronto? Really? I know why he's booed when he goes to Toronto. I know why I'd boo him if I was a Toronto fan. Remember the salute? Salute was a bad idea. But either way, when you decide that you're just going to tell the fans to go to hell, I'm sorry, you're allowing the actions of a small vocal minority to override the way you treat the majority. And that's what happened with Kessel. And again, in Pittsburgh, he's not a main guy, so he doesn't have to worry about that kind of pressure. He wasn't made for the pressure in Toronto. Matthews was. This kid's fun. And he's not reading articles about how the Leafs suck, or he's not caring about any of it. Because when this team wasn't a playoff team, his play never changed. Even when Matthews was in that goal slump, I had no doubt he was going to pull out of it. And I would get posts like that, like, oh, Matthews, I don't know. I'm like, Matthews will be fine. Matthews will be absolutely fine. And if he struggles this year, so be it. He'll be fantastic next year. The kid is amazing. So the Leafs are for real. And probably at the expense of these guys. Okay. These guys have had a seat at the table of the playoffs for too long this year and have taken it for granted. And now they won't be adding to this Stanley Cup cornucopia of cups that they have here. They're not going to be adding to that this year. There's no chance. Not with the way the Leafs are playing, not with the way the Sens are playing. No. And really looking ahead, here's what potentially could happen. Think about this. The Leafs could play the Sens in the first round. Sens fans would love that matchup. And then the winner could play Montreal. So you could have an all-Canada matchup in the first and second round, guaranteeing a Canadian team in the Final Four. And regardless of whether I cheer for Ottawa, and I do, or Toronto, and I, or Montreal, and I don't, having a Canadian team in the Final Four is only good for hockey up here. And it would give a little bit of hope that maybe a Canadian team's going to win a Stanley Cup before we all die. Which would be nice. The cup, not death. But anyways, fun watching them tonight, and I figured I'd do a video on it. I acknowledge they've been on a tremendous streak for the last 10 or 15 games. But again, as I stated with the Washington 9-game winning streak, there have been so many good streaks teams have been on over the last, 2 or 3 months that it is really hard to pick out a winning streak and say, oh, this one's the best one. The longest one is Columbus's, but I liked Minnesota's winning streak more than the one Columbus had. But the Washington one was pretty damn good too, and then that came to an end by Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh hasn't had a huge winning streak this year, but Pittsburgh's been really impressive. I'm having a really hard time handicapping who's going to win the Stanley Cup this year. But this Leafs team, if they keep it together and if they stay on this track, and if Shanahan and the rest of the brain trust in Toronto stick with this plan, so they avoid getting rentals at the deadline, and they just keep going with what they've got, even though it's 9 rookies in the lineup some nights. The potential is there for the Leafs to win something special. So let me know in the comments below why I'm wrong. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you're just browsing your way through. And I will use my third video tonight to discuss other moves made by other teams. This game is exciting. It's fun to watch. And I'm not saying the Leafs are going to win it. And I always say that. Anytime I'm watching a game, I make it clear the end result isn't what I'm impressed by. It is the effort. It is the fight that a team shows. And that makes a huge difference for me. That makes hockey fun to watch. And for me, probably more than any other sport, I find that effort makes a huge difference. Like in basketball, if all the Cavs decide to take the night off against some team of nobodies, but LeBron shows up, they win. Baseball, the whole team can go cold, but if you have a really fantastic pitcher, you probably win. In football, football might be the one exception. Football and hockey are the two sports where everything is so physical and so intense that if the team doesn't come together and play as a unit, it all falls apart. And I've watched some hockey and football games where things have fallen apart this year, and it can be spectacular. I'm trying to find an excuse to get Yvonne to watch football, and I haven't found one yet. Because I've really gotten into football the last couple weeks again. But that's what it is. It's when a team plays really well and they make that effort, it is so much fun to watch. And that's why I'm watching this tonight. That's why I've been watching a lot of Columbus games this year, because Columbus always shows up. And it doesn't matter whether they're ahead, they're behind, or they're tied. They played the game exactly the same way the whole way through. Minnesota does it too. So before Minnesota fans say anything, you guys do it too. The best teams, the teams that are going to do really well in the playoffs, play the same no matter how the game is going. And they play well. So I'm not talking about the way the Islanders play the game, where it always seems like it's going to fall apart. They're consistent. They're consistently bad. So let me know what you think. And It gets harder as the season goes along not to cheer for these guys. Damn it. Go back and look at my draft reaction video. Go back. Anybody who's like, oh, he's a Leafs fanboy, go back and look at my live reaction to the draft lottery. I was an angry, angry man that day. Angry. Angry. So angry. I got over it already by the time I did the reaction to the actual draft itself. I'd got over it for the most part. But man, I really wanted the Canucks to get Matthews. And this game, this team, proves to me that, yeah, if the Canucks had won that draft lottery and got Austin Matthews, it'd be a whole other ball game this year. He's that good. And if you're a Leafs fan, appreciate it. Because I've watched hockey for almost 40 years, and the closest the Leafs have had to a guy this special is Doug Gilmour. And Doug Gilmour was lightning in a bottle. He was really, really good for Toronto for about a year and a half. And then it sort of tailed off. It's like Naslund and Bertuzzi in Vancouver. There was a year and a half, 2 years where they were really, really good, and then it started to tail off. Matthews, he's a rookie. He's on his way up. So, Gilmour was special, but he was in the middle of his career. This kid's just starting. I think in order to find a Leaf this impressive this early, you have to go all the way back to Darryl Sittler in the 70s. You have to go that far back. So, yeah, it doesn't happen very often. And it's pretty cool when it does, even if it's a team that I try really hard not to cheer for. Really, really hard. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all again soon.